The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Great to have you. We have been on air with this program since February of 2015 with passion and pride. It's great to bring it to you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, home base for me. If we have not met yet and you don't know me, I'm a management consultant, organizational logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Elise Cortez and Associates help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by articulating their purpose and building inspirational leaders and cultures activated by meaning and purpose to turn those companies from a flatline EKG to a vibrant destination workplace. There, people are intrinsically motivated to perform at their best, grow to their full potential, and are committed to stay and dynamically deliver on the company's mission. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at elisecortez.com. Now, getting into today's program, we have Traci Schubert Barrett, a leadership and strategic consultant. After spending over 20 years in the television and advertising industry, Traci decided to merge her decades of experience of leading, strategizing, managing, and mentoring, and start her executive coaching and consulting firm called Navigate the Journey. She's the author of What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success, which we'll be talking about today. She joins us today from Nashville, Tennessee. Traci, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
It's so great to have you. Let's go ahead and just show this beautiful masterpiece that you created. It's so beautiful. I know you have children, but you may agree with me that it was probably more difficult to do this than it was to bring your children into the world.
Yes, my children were only 24 hours of labor. That was about 2 years plus of labor.
I understand, my friend. I really understand. So, it's really wonderful to get to talk with you and really, you have such a beautiful experience. In your book, what I appreciate about it is it's very real. You let us in, you tell your story, you teach us a lot. So let's just start with where things began for you. You spent 20 years at HDTV and helped build this amazing network there. So just give us maybe a couple of things that were really meaningful about that time there that really stuck with you.
Yeah. So, it was such an amazing, extraordinary experience, taking a business from literally, it was just an idea that our founder had. He came up with it in his basement. And then taking it across 2 decades to become a $1 billion media empire was a ride that, I'm just forever grateful for. Mm-hmm. And I think, for me, when I look back and I think about what were the biggest takeaways, it was the best entrepreneurial training ground I could have ever had. It really taught me, the fundamentals of business, but the power of mission, vision, and values, having core values. And I learned those principles. I saw them in action. I saw what happens when you hold true to them. And, HGTV in those early years never wavered from what we wanted to become and our why and the values that were our riverbanks that kind of kept us on track. And I also learned the power of community mentorship, leadership. I had some great mentors. When you're in any startup, you get kind of shoved into leadership pretty quickly. And so I learned a lot about leading an organization and about, the power of finding people a little further down the road than you and, asking them if you can enter into their universe and learn from them.
Well, that was beautiful. That was an incredible articulate summation of 20 some years, Traci. Thank you for that. Well, here's where it gets really amazing and interesting, and I think probably your readers are going to find this riveting. Here you are enjoying all of this. Now, mind you also talk about just the sheer craziness of your schedule and what you were trying to accomplish back then, not knowing what city you're in when you're at various airports. Your head is literally spinning. So somewhere there, you found yourself at what you call a crossroads, and I recognize that, by the way. And you were wrestling with a lot of questions. You started asking, is this all there is? Can I find true meaning in my work? What do I really want? Am I allowed to ask for what I want? What if there's more? I think so many listeners and viewers can relate to that, but kind of bring us into your world a bit about what was going on. Where were you into your career when you started really feeling those questions?
Yeah, a good 20 plus years in the television world. At that crossroads, it was, not long into my 40s, and had, 2 young kids at home. Husband had a demanding job. We both felt stretched pretty thin. And I felt like nobody was getting the best parts of me. It wasn't that I was unhappy at work, or I didn't like my job, or I had a bad boss. It was none of those things. It was just a high stress, intense environment. And it wasn't just at work. I had a lot going on around me. And as a working mom and getting to that crossroads, that kind of mid-career, midlife, whatever crossroads you want to name it, usually when we get to that crossroads, we start to think, well, wait a second, what am I doing? How did I get here? What are the mile markers that are ahead of me? I've checked off all the boxes by society's standards. I have it all, which, as working women coming up through those decades, we were often told, you should have it all, you can have it all. And then I just sort of ended up having it all, but also doing it all, being it all the things. And really wondering to myself, could I give myself the gift of space to figure out, what exactly do I want to do next? Do I want to stay here forever? Or, do I want to, maybe realize a new adventure? And then who am I? What's my identity outside of HGTV? So much of my identity, I basically grew up at HGTV. So, it was really hard to unravel my identity from that network. And as great and proud as I was of it, and as glamorous as people found it to be, I still knew that there were layers to me underneath that I just wanted to realize and explore. And I kind of wondered, again, what if there's more for me out there? And that was the question that just kept ringing in my head. And I knew I could shove it down and just keep the golden handcuffs on and just sort of, stay on autopilot and get through, or I could take a leap of faith.
I really understand that. I've hit a few crossroads, and one of them was just in 2003 when my daughter was born, and that's when I decided to go the self-employment route so that I could still work, but on more of my terms. So that was one. The other thing that I want to call out about what you just shared that I think it's really critical that I've learned over the years, Traci, and that is that word more. What I have found is when people start saying something like, but I want more, I think there might be more, that's when that's the beginning of the niggle, right? And so then you go on in your book, and this is really, really critical to talk about. This is so important. You go on and you say, if these crossroads could talk, they'd ask you these key questions. How did I get here? Why do I exist? Where am I going? If you don't have clear answers to these questions, you say, you'll likely wind up in the dreaded midlife crisis, which is actually quite real. And so that the feeling of being stuck with no answers can lead to depression or a desire to escape. The desire can sometimes get lived out through counterproductive choices, like having an affair, hastily filing for divorce, or buying a red sports car, which, by the way, I recognize in what happened for me. I didn't make those choices, but somebody else did. But this is real. This stuff happens when people are trying to find that meaning in their lives, that significance. And so what I really appreciate is then you go on to say, which brings us to the good news. The second half of life can actually be brighter and more meaningful than your first.
Yeah. I think that those kind of midlife crossroads are tricky for people because we are completely brainwashed by society that youth is key. Everything about youth, looking like you're right. Youthful, feeling youthful, those, the best years of our life, our college and our 20s. And so when we hit midlife, we consciously or subconsciously try to go backwards. So we, do all the things, and, whether that's a sports car to make us feel young again, whether that's a facelift, whether that's, whatever it is, that is where we basically are at that crossroads of either we're going to go backwards into crisis or we're going to go forward into really leaning into our life and realizing a better second half. But it's all, you've got to have that mindset and awareness. And I really think, unfortunately, a lot of people, it's small decisions, bad decisions that add up to really ending up on a path you didn't intend to end up on.
Yeah, so I want to build on this because I think it's really, really interesting. I was talking about this with my running partner this morning. We run 6 miles every Tuesday. And anyway, so we had plenty of time to talk. But one of the things I came to was, I sort of feel like there's 3 general paths people take when they get to this crossroads. One is the blow up path, which is the midlife crisis, when we make these series of choices that are really hard on us. Another path, which is really kind of what happened for me, was you start doing what you did, searching for significance, for something that's meaningful. And that's when I threw myself into my meaning and work and identity research. I think the third path is what I would call definitely the road more traveled, and it's sort of the straight and narrow apathetic path of just kind of sticking through and going one foot after the other, but just not feeling fulfilled, just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, I call that autopilot.
Yeah, that's
you're really just operating on autopilot. And, as we know with autopilot, you've got to be the one that switches the gear off and you have to go manual. And so, some people know and figure out and are able to find the space to figure out how to go manual and learn to lean into their lives, or they just stay on autopilot. And what's interesting is that oftentimes, people will wake up at like 70, 75, and they'll think, oh my gosh, what just happened?
Yeah.
And one of the highest rates of suicide are men that are 75 years old in their 70s. And for a lot of women, there's a spike in suicide between the ages of 45 and 55, because they're not only experiencing sort of this apathy, they're also going through hormonal changes. And so they're, chemically having struggles as well. And so it's a very tricky time. And so, one of the reasons I wrote the book was hoping that it would be one of those switches, one of those, pathway to really getting off autopilot or not making the mistake of going down the crisis road.
I think your work, my work, our work is really, really so important, because it's not just even about the fulfillment piece of it. It's, of really being fulfilled in your life and realizing your potential and living your purpose through the work, but it's about true vitality. I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, Traci, a person in my not immediate, but general friend network, death by suicide. And he said that, this was, he just didn't feel like he was doing something worthwhile with his life. His work wasn't meaningful, and he's no longer with us. I mean, this is a true casualty that's happening when we can't really surface the level of meaning and significance that we're looking for. It's just really critical work that, both of us are investing our lives now into.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so tragic. And sadly, it's not uncommon.
I know.
Especially now, post-pandemic, we're in a very kind of lonely, stressed, anxious society where anxiety is the number one mental disorder that is diagnosed today, the number one. So we're, a very anxious, kind of tortured society. And we're all looking for that light, the light that's going to illuminate for us the meaning and purpose that we all are innately designed to have and to feel and to realize for ourselves.
Yeah, and I really appreciated, and it's just one of the things that you said so succinctly in your book. You say the common pursuit of success is a roadmap many have traveled. The pursuit of significance is one few have traveled. And I think that's really true. But even just, learning that, when you accept that this is what success looks like, to go and slog these crazy hours and make, whatever money that you think is really important at the expense of your soul is really, I think we're really starting to wake up to how that just doesn't work.
Yeah. And the thing is, success metrics, which I talk about in the book, that are common, is that we're measured by the amount of wealth we accumulate or
Right.
power. Today, like I see this even with my teenagers and their generation, how many likes, followers, how big's your platform? How many, are you an influencer or not an influencer? And it's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with these things. I'm happy when people reach a level of success that they desire, whether that's just an amount of money that can be sustainable, or to enjoy a great vacation, or even having a title at work or having a certain level of a platform are good things and can be good things. The problem is when they become unhealthy drives, when it becomes this sort of toxic ambition where we are driven by those things, and that clouds our ability and inhibits our ability to have significance, to really realize our positive impact, because the blinders are on and we're after the things that society is telling us are the most important when they're not.
We've plugged into the engine. Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, let's grab our first break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Traci Schubert Barrett, a leadership and strategic consultant, and she's the co-founder of the executive coaching and consulting firm called Navigate the Journey. She's also the author of What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. As I too am dedicated to helping create a world where people can realize their potential at work and are led by inspirational leaders who help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business that betters the world, I continue to write my own books. And one of my latest books came out in March of 2023. It's called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business, which is designed to help leaders understand what today's workforce really wants and needs, and then offers 22 best practices to help equip them to provide it to their leadership and their culture. You can learn more about it at elisecortez.com or on Amazon. If you are just joining the program today, my guest is Traci Schubert Barrett. She's the author of What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success. So before I get into what you're doing today, I want to set it up here with something you did beautifully in the book. And, I suppose you can't really talk about any kind of leadership without bringing up Peter Drucker at some point. But you talk about how, of course, he is hailed as the father of modern management and was the author of 39 books, you say 2/3 of which he wrote after the age of 65. And you say he gave his last lecture not long before he died at the age of 95. And he believed that the best years of somebody's life was between the ages of 60 and 90. Sounds good to me. And of course that played out for him well, you say. So operating from the best is yet to come mentality can give you that extra oomph that you need to carry things over to the finish line and really create something strong. So I really believe in that. I think that's true. I think you're an example of that. I think I'm an example of that. I had Cynthia Covey Haller on my program, and she co-wrote a book with her father, Stephen Covey, called Live Life in Crescendo. Your most important work is always ahead of you, which echoes this. So if you could just speak a little bit to this idea, because so many people, as you say in your book, are programmed to, want to go for the retirement at 55 or 62 or whatever, which of course we know is highly associated with mortality. So can you speak a little bit to this idea of the best years are from 60 to 90 and that forward gaze?
Yeah, I think, when we think about our work, sometimes, we can put it in the bucket that work is only a means to an end.
Right.
It's for the paycheck, it's to enjoy the weekend, and that's what we're working. And we rob ourselves of that opportunity to really master a craft. And when we look at Peter Drucker, we see a picture of mastery, of somebody who enjoyed his craft so much. He saw the positive impact he was able to have. I talk about in the book how it was just right before his death, he had met with, mentoring some students, and that brought him so much joy, his work. And so, we don't have to let go of our work. Now, I think as we age and progress through the stages of our life, we don't maybe want to work as long or as hard, or we feel like we paid our dues. And we get to realize in our later decades kind of the fruits of our labor, right? That, and also I talk about mindset and having that longevity mindset and having that wisdom mindset and contentment. It's very important to have the proper mindset as you age and as you look towards the future chapters of your life as far as work is concerned. And so when you can find that sweet spot, when you know how you're uniquely designed, you understand your passions, your values, and you find work that really can give you meaning and significance, and you can have a positive impact. And it does not have to be large. It could just be small in the little world around you, or just between the one other person or the two other people that you're encountering each day. Or it could be a great big stage. It does not matter. But when you understand how to master your craft and how to have a positive impact, then work is it doesn't make it less hard, because work is toil. Monday mornings are rough for all of us, but we can find the power in it, and we can find fulfillment in it in a way that makes us not want to quit. It makes us always, wanting to be working into the end. And all of my mentors that are further down the road than me are all people that are still engaged. They're still engaged, and they look younger, they feel younger. They don't talk about, age as if it's this awful, horrible thing. They really look at each day as a gift, as one more day to have an impact.
Completely agree, 100%. As I said to you before we got in here, and I'm just going to go ahead and repeat it. So, as I mentioned, I read part of your book when I was at the gym working out. So when I start there, I'm on the bicycle and, I'm reading your book and I'm underlining my pencil and such. And, every once in a while I'm like, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. I agree. And, and of course the other people in the gym were looking at me like, she's back. The crazy lady's back. So you don't endorse me in public, Traci, but it's okay.
Oh, I love that. I'm honored by that. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so now then, that situates beautifully for you to share just how it was that you were able to create a business that aligns with your own dreams, your own passions, your own talent, your purpose. Tell us about how that came to be and what you're doing.
Yeah, so it happened organically. It's, like I said, I left HGTV kind of the top of my game. There was no apparent reason to anybody for me to leave. I always say there was no push. I didn't have a bad boss. There was no layoff. There was no any of that. It was time for me to take a leap of faith. So there was no push, but there was a pull. There was something kind of pulling me that was really saying, there's something else out there. I didn't know what it was, but I was open to whatever came my way. And what happened was I left and people just kept reaching out to me, mainly from the media industry, that were like, hey, can you help me with this? Can you coach me on this? Can you, I need to get through this situation that I'm in. And it was the best use of those decades of corporate business experience, married with the fact that I had gotten my master's in professional psychology early on in my career at HGTV, mainly because we didn't have management training and that type of stuff early on. I was like, I don't really want to get an MBA. I already have a business degree. I'll go and, work on a psychology degree. And it was the best decision I ever made. And so I took that experience, and my husband at the time was doing strategic planning, and he's like, why don't we start a business consulting firm? You can do executive coaching and team building, and I'll do strategic planning. And it was just this, and I can remember to this day sitting on the couch 10 years ago having this conversation, and we looked up Navigate the Journey, because I was like, it's not about the destination, it's the journey. And I really want people to understand that in business and in life. And if we can come alongside them and help them get to where they really want to go, then I think it would be perfect for us, because we're at this stage in our career where we're ready to pay it forward, where we're ready to really be the wind beneath other people's wings, help them succeed and realize their dream and their potential. And we just got super excited about it, and we built it just one client at a time. It was like one coaching client, one company that wanted strategic planning, and it was just little by little we built the company, and we are just loving every minute of it today. We just love coming into people's worlds and helping them, realize greater significance through their work, through being a good leader, but also in their life in general.
Mm-hmm. And you're 10 years in now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just about. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, so many things that I loved about what you put forth in the book that I thought were just so elevating and educational. One of them, of course, is your focus on perspectivity. And so you talk about how that really will dictate your life trajectory. And then you give 3 key mindsets that you think are important to build a life of significance. Will you talk about each one of those?
Yes. Yeah. So I always say, no matter, what stage or anything I'm on, that there is power in perspective, that we underutilize the power in our mind, and I love all the kind of research around that. And when we can get our perspective right, it alters the way we see the world and the way the world sees us. And
Yes.
It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tried to do in my book was boil down kind of the 3 mindsets I think that are super helpful for people when they're at a crossroads and they're thinking about their future. And the first one's longevity. I think the first thing we need to realize and really, ingrain into our brain is that we have a long, healthy life ahead of us, if we choose. And I know that there are a lot of things in life that we don't control, but putting those aside, if we can believe, instead of, we've all been taught sort of like carpe diem, like this day could be your last. And I think it really feeds into kind of this hustle culture and this like franticness versus, kind of resting in and believing that we have decades ahead. And we are, I have a lot of research in the book about, longevity stats and what people are living until, and how people are living longer and they're living healthier longer. And we have more options ahead of us to really engage in a healthy lifestyle. And I just love that. I think that's the most important of the 3, really, is because once you believe that, then all of a sudden you're willing to take another risk. You're willing to maybe try something new. You're willing to double down where you are or fall back in love with your company, because you understand that they're decades ahead instead of days. Mm-hmm. And then secondly,
let me hold just a second. I want to comment on that one because it's just so great. 2 things. One, I remember 8 years ago, I was in a leadership development workshop for myself. The speaker was a futurist, and she said, and there were about 85 of us women in the crowd. And she said, if you're 50 years old and in pretty good health, you've got a pretty good chance of living to 100. And I had immediate thoughts. The first one was, awesome, I have more time to go after all my dreams and my goals and make them happen. The second immediate thought was, oh crap, I better take better care of this carcass that's going to get me there,
Yes.
Which is so important. If you have a longevity mindset, then you want to also take good care of yourself. Yes. And then the second thing I wanted to comment on is that also really speaks to why you gave the Peter Drucker quote of, the best can be so far ahead of you, that there's so much you can do in those years, those 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that people haven't traditionally thought of that way. And I stand to celebrate that too. And that's the path. I want to be the woman in the purple outfit and the hat, bringing her bicycle into town for things. And she knows all the people in the town, and she's going to deliver a lecture later on at 85. That's where I'm going.
I love that picture. I think that's fabulous. And I think that picture in your mind, envisioning that is what is going to keep you young and healthy. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are so many examples of this out there now, of women and men that we can see that have said, you know what, the heck with ageism. I'm not, you're not putting me out to pasture. I have a lot to give.
Right.
And, I think America has been behind on this, really holding up its elders and holding up the wisdom and the experience, and knowing that there's so much for the generations ahead to really pour back into the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And that, maybe we need to have more older workers around more and speaking into the lives of these people who are coming up now, these generations. There's so much richness in that.
Absolutely, Traci. Right there with you. Let's keep championing that. Okay, so then the next mindset.
The next mindset is wisdom. So the wisdom mindset, really, what I say and what's most important about this mindset is that as you age, wisdom isn't a given. We all think, oh, the older, the wiser. No, I think we all know some older people that aren't so wise. Wisdom has to be pursued. We really need to have that learner mentality. And this is why I loved when you were like, I'm going to read your book, and I know how much you read and you absorb. And what that does is help you grow in wisdom, grow in knowledge. It's that intellectual health. And I think right now we're living in a society where, truth is fractured, integrity is vague, people really going after wisdom and really trying to know more and be more curious than certain. It's not happening as much, but if we can all recommit to it, I think we'll see a resurgence of goodness and positivity and significant lives happening all around us. So I really love the idea of the pursuit of wisdom that I think we all should adopt.
Beautifully rendered. And then you have, of course, the contentment mindset, which I have not actually heard it described that way. So
yeah. So, there's a million books on happiness. I think everybody's chasing happiness. I talk about in the book, and I kind of try to flip that on its head, that happiness is very circumstantial. I think that we can really trick ourselves from a psychological standpoint to say, oh, I want to have a happy life. And what we really need to be saying is, I want to have a content life. Because life isn't going to be happy 100% of the time. Not every day is going to be a good day. Not all the moments within a day are going to be good. And so when we look at our life as a whole and we just say, hey, what I really desire is a full and satisfying life, a life that I can feel content in. What that does is it gives us room for the ups and the downs. Right. It helps us to see and rejoice the triumphs, but it also helps us to see that the trials and the hardships are there for a reason, and we can grow and we can learn and we can mature through those. So I just talk about how contentment, I think, is really an antidote for that endless chase of happiness.
Beautiful, Traci. Let's let our listeners and viewers chew on that for just a moment. We've been on air with Traci Schubert talking about her new book, What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success. After the break, the first thing we're going to talk about is the number one reason people do not live out their true purpose. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. I mentioned in the last break that my last book, which is out in March of 2023, which is The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. It's now out. Now what I've done is I've created an organizational assessment for you. It's sitting on my website, elisecortez.com. And you can download that assessment and you can learn the extent to which your company's leadership and culture meet the standards of today's workforce. It's free. Check it out. If you're just new to the program, my guest is Traci Schubert Barrett. She is the author of What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success. Okay, so now we have to go into, and of course I knew the answer to this question, but I'm guessing a few of our listeners and viewers don't. So talk a bit, if you would, about the number one reason people do not live out their true purpose.
Yeah, so I talk about that in my experience and with the people that I coach. The thing that comes up at time and time again is the fear of not having enough money, not making
Right.
enough money.
Yep. Yep.
And especially in corporate America, the golden handcuffs whole phrase and being coined is by no accident, right? There are a lot of people
It
walking
works.
around. Yeah, it works. And yeah, it's hard. I don't take anything away from the fact that it is scary. It's scary to make a change or a pivot when you have great responsibility, families and mortgages and all of those things. And so I try to affirm people where they are. But then what I want people to do is really examine, what do they need?
Yes.
What really do they need? And are things like money, power, title, fame, loving them back? Are those the things that are really serving them back? Because when we're just serving them day after day after day, that is a hard road to go down, because you're not going to find a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment in it.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Okay, so now, because I found the same thing. I mean, I've jumped off the cliff to pursue the meaning and purpose route. I did that. I focused on that in July of 2018. When I did that, Traci, did not have a single client that said, I want to work with you. I was convicted that I need to do this. I need to draft my own first book, create my own leadership program, and start a nonprofit. And I did that. And it was just to be true, but it was a huge leap of faith. But the crazy things you can do high on purpose, right? Crazy things you can do.
That's true.
But I understood, though, I had myself where I didn't have, I had learned how to consolidate. So I knew how to make that leap. But to your point, I really appreciate and applaud the choice of how difficult it is to pursue that when you're standing on a big, nice, comfortable paycheck that keeps showing up every single other week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was scary for us as a family, walking away from HGTV and knowing that we were going to lose a huge portion of our income, and trying to really sit down and realize, with as much honesty and frankness as we could, like, what are we willing to give up?
Yes.
And what are we, what is the space and time we're willing for me to realize something different? And what are our priorities? And can I put those things first? The children that I really wanted to be spending more time with, and our home. And, I think it was hard for a lot of people around me to understand or accept. And I think it was scary for other people to see me do it. I got many calls where people, especially women, were like, you can't do this. You're, it's going backwards, and making me feel guilty. Or people saying, what does that mean for the rest of us? And it wasn't like I was making some big judgment on the world. I just decided I was going to do something for me. Mm-hmm. I was going to make a decision based on my terms and what I wanted for my life. It was not this sweeping statement for the world. But what it showed me by doing it was what was underneath other people's motives, and what they were really feeling. And when they watched me make that choice, what emotions it brought up in them. And that, to me, was fascinating to see.
Oh, I'm a social scientist. And so for me, what that really speaks to is that, that you challenge their norms and their choices, and, you're leaving the nest. And, whenever, your tribe or a person in your tribe starts to try to get away, there's a tendency to want to bring them back in. Mm-hmm. And that happens all over the world, in all kinds of cultures, all kinds of religions. It's fascinating.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah, right. I knew you would love that with your education. So speaking of that, now there's an element too to that of identity, which I want to cover off next. And you talk about in your book how James Clear writes in his book, Atomic Habits. And you quote him as saying, don't just read a book or have a reading routine, become a reader. Don't just run a marathon or work out regularly, become a runner. To fulfill your potential, keep expanding and elevating your identity. You will stick with your life vision when it becomes part of who you are, rather than just a goal you have set for yourself. So, and when it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes a mindset.
Mm.
I think that is incredibly powerful, Traci, what you did in those short bits of how you strung that together. His work and your perspective on it is critical.
Thank you. Yeah, I just feel, again, back to mindset and back to how we're seeing our work and seeing our life. And this really plays into again, that whole idea around mastering a craft. We see this if you watch like Chef's Table, or you've seen,
Yes.
Jiro, Dreams of Sushi, or anybody who's, I think chefs are just really kind of a great example, because there's so much art and even though they can become these great admired chefs, it's still not enough for them. It's like, what's next? And I think when we look at the things that we try to master, or we look at the things we want to do, maybe it's just a hobby as well, that really helps alter our mindset when we say, you know what, I'm not gonna just read a book, I'm a reader. I'm not just going to run with my friend every once in a while, I'm a runner. And that changes my mentality. It gets me putting on the sneakers to run much more often. And I think, when we see people like older senior citizens that have taken on this mentality, we also see more vitality in them. When they say, they're still taking on a craft, or they're taking on, some sort of athletic stance or whatever, we see that they then have more reason to live. So it really helps us beyond work to have meaning and purpose.
I agree with every single last utterance of that. I think one of the things that you've done really exceptionally well in your book is the way that you help people come to their life compass. In defining your unique talents, your passions, your personal core values, and your purpose. And you really go on. This is where I think you really separate yourself from a lot of people that are in this space, Traci, because what you do is you go on to iterate. And listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. This is critical. She says, your unique talents are your what, your passions are your where, your core values are your how, and your core purpose is your why. I think that is so incredibly compelling and so specific, and what a way to be able to help isolate this for people, to get them on a path where they can really see who they are and where they want to go. Traci, just kudos.
Oh, thank you. So this is part of, I outline this in the book of Strategic Life Map, which is a curriculum that I've created where people can take some tried and true, strategic planning concepts like mission, vision, values. And I put it into a compass and say, this is the compass that's going to illuminate your path. And if you can stay true to who you truly are, and I believe we're all uniquely made, just as unique on the outside of our fingertips as we are on the inside. And, when we can push past things like, our self-limiting beliefs or how other people we believe view us, and we can really get deep into understanding who we are, then we can start to own what we can do. Yeah. And so, I just love the idea that our talents are really what we can, bring to the world, and our passions are where our heart is, and our core values are how we want to behave, how we want to interact, how we want to show up to the world and be received. And, those keep us safe, and they're a filter when things, people rub up against us wrong. And then the purpose is why we exist. That is a big question so many people are wrestling through. And it's a big question. I get it. And I think one of the reasons I wrote the book, I wish I had at my crossroads, because I had these questions, but I had no framework to answer them.
Yes.
And so, having the Strategic Life Map framework, and now it's an online course because I just wanted to reach as many people as possible. Now there's a framework out there where people can go deep and really figure these things out for themselves and create that compass and that vision for the future, and be able to really lean into the idea of a significant life.
Beautiful. Okay, so next what I want to do is I want to read a short passage here and then ask you to comment on it, because even just the way that you wrote it is so incredibly compelling, and I don't want to lose anything in the translation. So you say, A defined mission can also fill people with drive and ambition for something greater than themselves. It pulls us out of an individualistic success-only mentality and pushes us toward a more collective view of the world. A lack of mission leads people to despair, dysfunction, and alienation. It is a personal purpose that gives us more solid footing and a clear avenue to connect with others. It also helps us to find the wonderful satisfaction of being useful to all those around us. People feel the very best about themselves when they give the very best of themselves to others. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really think that one of the things when I was writing the book, I was thinking, gosh, I really hope people don't think what I'm trying to do is make you more full of yourself. That knowing yourself more deeply, I'm not trying to really say, build your head up. What I'm trying to do is that when we really understand how we can impact the world, what happens is we stop looking inward and we start looking outward. And then we start to look around with how can we serve others with our gifts and our talents. And then when we start to do that, we realize, oh my gosh, this feels really good. This feels really fulfilling. This makes actual sense, and we think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we think about getting up to self-actualization, which is that basically reaching your full potential and have a fulfilling life. I think what keeps us from getting there is when we just serve ourselves. Mm-hmm. When we're just serving ourselves and we're just trying to, to accumulate. But then when we can push past that and start to realize we can serve others, and then we just get a taste of what that feels like, we're altered, we're changed.
Mm-hmm. As a logotherapist, which of course is focused on the idea that meaning is our chief source of concern, it's also our chief source of energy. What that puts forth is the idea that of the importance of self-transcendence, which is exactly what you're talking about, right. Which is one of the best ways we can achieve a state of vitality. And so as both of us know, that purpose is always about serving other people. Mm-hmm. So we combine this notion of who do we want to help and how can we uniquely serve them through our purpose. And now we've really got something pretty special.
Yeah. And I think, it takes a lot of self-awareness to get there. It takes a lot of pausing for a second and really knowing that, making your work matter is one of the most important steps you can take to finding purpose in life in general. And really, I think so many people struggle, and I'm sure you see this all the time in your work, struggle in the workplace because they think that the promotion's going to make it better, or when finally the boss they don't like leaves, it's going to be better, or when the company's sold, it's going to be better. That there's always something that's going to make it better, and they're not looking within. They're not looking like, what change can I make? How can I change my perspective? How can I have a positive impact in what I'm doing? How can I see this work differently? And, I don't want anybody to read my book and hear my message and think that the only answer is to leave. It's not.
Right.
There's a lot of people who go through my process and they fall back in love with their company. They see it in a whole new light and they think, oh my gosh, I've been missing the mark. There's so much I can do where I am. And that is also just as beautiful for me to see, than the person who wants to take a leap of faith and do something different. So, it's really all about perspective and seeing things differently.
Traci, that is a beautiful way to close the show. It's amazing the time evaporated with you. This was beautiful. I'm so happy that I get to share with my listeners and viewers. Thank you for being a guest on Working on Purpose.
Thank you. I loved every second of it. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Me too. Listeners, viewers, if you want to learn more about this amazing woman, Traci Schubert Barrett, the work she and her team do at Navigate the Journey, or the book she has just got out, What If There's More, start by visiting her website. It's Traci Schubert Barrett. Let me spell that for you. So it's Traci, Traci, Schubert, Schubert, Barrett, Barrett, TraciSchubertBarrett.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on air with Kent Gregoire talking about the work he does unleashing entrepreneurial spirit for good and anchored in stakeholder capitalism principles. Next week, we'll be on the air with Steve Farrell talking about how his journey and how he co-founded and led 2 high-growth technology companies in Silicon Valley, and the way that he shares his journey from the pursuit of wealth and traditional success toward a more fulfilling life of caring and service to others. We'll be conversing on his new book, A New Universal Dream, My Journey from Silicon Valley to a Life in Service of Humanity. It will be a perfect build on today's conversation with Traci. See you there, and remember, work is an essential part of our lives, ultimately the way we spend our lives, and can be one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.